Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, we're going to be talking about 3 of my favorite crankbaits for fall fishing. I wouldn't say that fall is like my favorite month for crankbait fishing, but it's definitely a close second. I'd say probably late May, June, and July is probably my number 1, but that's more for deep diving crankbaits specifically. But the fall is a really, really good season to start throwing crankbaits because, as we've talked about in a lot of videos recently, the fall for most of the country really marks that just massive shad migration into the backs of creeks on most of these lakes. And whenever you have that, you need to be using presentations that really imitate shad. And crankbaits are like, tailor-made to imitate shad. So I just wanted to show you some of my favorite crankbaits. And we're going to start off with by far my favorite fall crankbait for especially mid-depth. But anytime I'm seeing fish in the 5-foot range to 8-foot range, this is going to be a crankbait that really does a lot of damage. And more specifically, I'm going to give you the juice on this one. So you're not going to just throw this crankbait anywhere. What I really like to look for when I'm going to the backs of these creeks is the last channel swing, where the creek channel swings into the bank. And that usually marks a much steeper bank than the rest of the creek, okay? Because you have that channel that swings into the bank, maybe touches some harder rock, and maybe even creates a little bit of a bluff situation. But the best scenario is if you have more of like a 45-degree bank where that channel swings in. So the crankbait that I'm talking about is going to be the Bandit 200. Now, I'm getting a little bit specific as far as brand here. I don't work with Bandit, don't get any free product or anything like that. It's just a crankbait I've been using for a very long time. Another crankbait would be the Series 3 from Strike King, which has kind of fallen out of favor, over the last, decade or so. But overall, I love these Bandit 200s. The 300 is good too, but really the 200 is perfect because it's almost like you're throwing a square bill a little bit, but you're able to get down a little bit deeper. And this crankbait has a great action, usually tracks pretty straight, but as with a lot of these mass-produced crankbaits, you're probably going to have to tune it just a little bit. But overall, this is a crankbait that I kind of put in the finesse crankbait category, and it just really imitates those small shad that you're seeing that are real prevalent in the back of these creeks. So again, I get on those kind of channel swing banks, and a lot of times that's where the fish are going to gang up on. They're going to be hanging out by that last part of the creek that has a little bit of depth to it. And so it's a pretty high percentage crankbait in a high percentage type situation during the fall. So the Bandit 200, really awesome crankbait. I usually throw it on like a 7.3 medium action Versus series rod. I've tried fishing it on more composite rods, but it's such a small crankbait. I really like to use a full graphite, but like a medium action rod. And then I'll use usually 10 or 12 pound test. If you go any heavier than that, I really don't think that you get the action out of this bait that you should. So I use a lighter line in general. So like usually it's Seagar and VizX. As far as the reel, pretty much all of these are going to be like a reel gear ratio in like the 6s. So 6.6 to 1 is what I usually use for this one. But that is probably by far my favorite fall crankbait, just because a lot of the best crankbait fishing for me this time of year has to do with those channel swing banks, and that is just the perfect depth. It's got the perfect action. It works around cover, and I love it. The next crankbait that I really love to fish in the fall and this is more of a category of bait rather than a specific brand, because it's been copied by pretty much everybody. And that is the 1.5 or 2.5, depending on what size bait fish you're seeing. But the 1.5 style crankbaits out there, really good. They're just square bill crankbaits, fairly buoyant. They work great around cover. You know, if I'm fishing a creek that maybe is too shallow to fish the Bandit 200, even if there's a channel swing bank, sometimes you have that channel swing bank on some fisheries and it's like you're still only fishing 4 foot of water, even though that's like the deepest area. This is going to be a really good one. Still really good, those transition banks, and especially when the water starts getting dirtier. So if you get like a heavy rain during the fall, and you get some real thick color to that water, or even muddy conditions, the square bill is going to work really, really well. And really there's 2 different colors that I use. I use like the sexy shad or chartreuse sexy shad. And also, if the water's really dirty, I'll do something like this one right here, chartreuse with black back. Can't really go wrong with that set of colors with the square bill, and really any of these. That's kind of the standard issue colors. All right, so next one we're going to be talking about is a crankbait that I use probably the least. It's I'm not going to say it's my least favorite, but it's the one that I use the least in the fall, because usually in the fall I'm fishing shallower than normal. But there are times I go to fisheries where, you know, there's still a lot of fish deeper, and I need to have a crankbait that can kind of fish those transition type structures, such as points. You know, if the fish are hanging out on some deeper points in that, like, you know, 10 to 15 foot range, you know, and I'm trying to catch those fish that are intercepting the shad as they go back into the creeks. This is more of kind of an early fall pattern, but I really like to throw a Strike King Series 5. And this is a little bit specific to the brand because I just love Strike King deep diving crankbaits. It's just, they're just baits that I have a lot of confidence in. Again, they're mass produced, so a lot of them come out of the package needing tuning right away. They just don't run right. But once you get them running right, man, these things just catch fish like crazy. So the Series 5, and you can use a 5XD too if you need a little bit of extra depth. But these are just such great crankbaits for fall fishing, you know, in those deeper type structures, you know. And when I say deeper, again, we're talking 10 to 15, which nowadays isn't all that deep. But for fall fishing, 10 to 15 feet can be pretty deep on a lot of these fisheries. So a crankbait is a really, really good bait to get a good reaction strike out of a fish on this type of structure. And the 5 or 5XD tend to be my favorites this time of year. Again, kind of fishing the same general shad patterns. You know, I'm not going to give you like exact colors, because a lot of them, as long as they're shad patterns, will work. You just got to experiment on any given day. As far as I guess I got to kind of backtrack a little bit, because I forgot to mention the tackle that I like to use with the square bill, the 1.5 or 2.5. And that setup is a 7.3 medium heavy Versa Series rod, a little bit heavier rod overall, just because I'm fishing around cover, and I feel like a little bit stiffer, more responsive rod does better with that. I'm usually going to use 12 to 15 pound test, you know, Seagar and VizX for my line with those square bills, and then the same reel, the 6.6 to 1 gear ratio. And then the Series 5 or 5XD, those are more so on like a composite rod. I like a 7.3 heavy action all-purpose series composite rod from Fitzgerald, and I like to use 10 or 12 pound test Seagar and VizX with that one, and the same exact 6.6 to 1 gear ratio reel. But Anyways, guys, just wanted to give you 3 different options for really 3 different depth zones. The first 2 that I talked about, the Series 200 and the 1.5 or 2.5 square bills, those are going to be great for back into the creek. So later in kind of, you know, the time period where the fish are most shallow or making their way into the backs of the creek. So like the back 2/3 of the creeks. But the Series 5 or 5XD, you know, that can be really good when the fish are just starting to transition into the backs of the creek. So like the first third of the creek, that's where I see a lot of fish. And usually it's around points, maybe it's a hump, but also around road beds. Road beds that are perfectly placed, you know, going across a creek can be really, really good because a lot of big fish will set up on those road beds as the shad just move over top of them. It's a great ambush location for those bass to hang out and just pick off the shad. So the 5 and the 5XD do really well in that type of scenario. So anyways, guys, crankbaits don't get as much attention nowadays, especially in the fall, as they used to, you know, with forward-facing sonar, everybody throwing a minnow, but they still work great. So if you're looking for another way to target fall fish, check out these 3 different crankbaits. I think that you'll have a lot of success with them. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that if you enjoy this content, ask me questions. You know, if you want me to cover a topic in a future video, drop it in the comment section, but also consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel because that is an excellent way to keep me motivated to keep doing these videos. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.